This episode is brought to you by Puma Running.
I'm really after a new race day shoe. Can you tell me a bit more about the Puma Fast R2?
The Puma Fast R2 are my favourite race day shoe. Now, I ran in these for Chicago Marathon and I definitely think they helped me on my way to a 4-minute PB where I ran 2:23, just because they save your legs so much, which is obviously very helpful for marathon running.
What do you think makes them so special?
Two things I think really make the difference. Firstly, this carbon plate that you can see extends right beyond the forefoot. That just gives you an extra spring on each step, really propels you forward. Secondly, the nitro foam. This is nitrogen infused foam, which gives you maximum cushioning and maximum energy return. So that means you are more efficient each stride and can essentially run faster for longer.
Okay, I'm sold.
Well, I have great news for our 5 Miles Easy UK listeners. We have a race special discount code for Puma Running. Enter 5ME20 at Puma Running to get 20% off. Thanks for joining me, Rose Harvey.
And me, Steph McCall.
For 5 Miles Easy.
The podcast where we go behind the scenes on the highs, lows and learnings of our running journeys.
And bring you conversations to inspire, motivate and get you one step closer to your running goals.
So let's lace up
for 5 Miles Easy. Hello and welcome back to 5 Miles Easy. Our regular listeners will know that we had a little break over the new year, but we've been working very hard behind the scenes to bring you a whole load of brilliant new conversations to get you lacing up your trainers and hitting your 2024 running goals. However, before we kick off, we do have a small favour to ask you. Our channel grows when you subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Spotify and share these episodes with your friends. So whilst you're listening, please click those buttons and share this with someone who you think might like the show. And in return, we promise we will keep sharing tips, conversations and motivation to help fuel your running journeys.
So after a few weeks hiatus, we have so much to catch up on today. I'm back in the UK after swapping the British weather for a few weeks training in sunny Cape Town, which featured a lot of hills, warmer weather and beautiful trails. So I'll be sharing some tips on balancing flat and fast sessions with some hillier runs and trail running and when in the day to train when it's in the middle of summer.
And I am still avoiding the British winter, very much delaying my homecoming. And for the last 6 weeks, I've been over the pond in the US. I've joined up with the Puma Elite running team for their altitude training camp in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So I'm going to be sharing lots of insights about life on a pro training camp, as well as some tips and tricks about training at altitude. First of all, Cape Town. Now, I've been to Cape Town a few times and absolutely love it, but I haven't actually done that much running there, to be honest. So tell me about the running scene.
Cape Town, I love it so much, and I know you've been before, and I'm going to get you there next year again to run because it's just the best. And it's any runner out there, you've got to go to Cape Town if you get the opportunity. I went for the first time a year ago, and yeah, I just was absolutely sold. Literally, probably an hour in, I was like, right, I know I'm going to love it here. So yeah, I was there for like a couple of weeks last year, and then I decided that I wanted to go again. And because it's obviously summer there at the moment, it's just the perfect time to go where you can kind of miss a few weeks of the British winter, and just be able to train in the warmth and the sun. So I think in terms of running there, like number one, you've got great weather, which is just so helpful, I think, with motivation and just getting up and getting outside and just enjoyment with running. And then number two is just like the general running scene out there. I mean, I think that's probably is helped by the weather, but the culture out there is very outdoorsy. You just see runners everywhere. Everyone's just so friendly and inclusive. And it's just such a really good vibe. And I think that helps with motivation as well, because you never feel alone when you're there. Even if you're running on your own, you just see so many people out and about. It kind of feels like everyone's together in it. So yeah, I just love it. And so many nice coffee shops and brunch places, which I feel like are a runner's staple as well. So you've got it all.
The running culture, are there lots of like groups you can join up with? You said it's very outdoorsy culture.
Yeah, so like I was lucky that I was staying with Carla Molinaro, who we had on the podcast in the first season. I think it was episode 3. So she lives in Cape Town, and she's got a great group of guys that she trains with, which she's just kind of accumulated over time. So she moved out there like just over a year ago. And like I say, because everyone's really open to like meeting new people, she just managed to kind of rope more people into this group over time. So I think people are just really open to like training together, and you see lots of groups out there running. And I guess it just depends what you want. Like if you want more of a track based interval group, or if you want like more road running, or there's probably groups that just are based in the trails. I think there's just something for everyone. And because they're so inclusive and open for more people joining, I think you don't need to be scared to just message people on Instagram or like any other forum and just say, can I join you for a run? And it's just like, of course you can. Like we meet here. And then, yeah, it's such a good way to meet people as well.
Yeah, that's so great. And it must make it a lot safer as well. Because I know, I to be honest, I did always feel reasonably safe in Cape Town, but South Africa is not quite like the UK in terms of safety. So that must make a big difference, having access to those groups and just being able to, link up with people and make sure you've got company.
Yeah, I think so. And I also but before I went to Cape Town for the first time, I was a bit worried about my safety, because you hear things, and obviously you hear things through the media and stuff, which can kind of highlight, I don't know, sometimes it can exaggerate the situation, but you are right. Like there are parts of South Africa that are not safe at all. And there are parts of Cape Town that you probably wouldn't want to venture to alone. But I would want to reassure anyone that was thinking of going out there that I have not felt unsafe once when I've been in Cape Town. And yes, running in groups obviously helps, but like I've done a lot of runs solo, and I think it's just being sensible. Like, run in places where you're going to have lots of people there, like who are also running or walking around. I wouldn't run alone when it's dark. The trails have got safer. I haven't actually been in the trails on my own. I know people do run alone there. I'd probably stay in a group. I know there's more security around them now, but yeah, I think just have your wits about you. Don't be like flashing your phone around, it's just being sensible. But I wouldn't worry. I've never felt unsafe being in Cape Town, which is really nice, because I was definitely a bit nervous before I went the first time.
Yeah, it sounds like such a good place to train. Okay,
Yeah.
it's on my bucket list. And it's obviously been very warm, as you said. It's their summer there. So how have you adapted to the heat, going from a very cold England when we left in January to a very hot Cape Town?
Yeah, so I mean, I've been quite lucky just because I do go away a fair amount. Like my body it's got used to training in warmer weather just over time. But that's not to say when you first have that contrast from English winter to summer conditions, it is an adjustment. And I think, number one, get up early and sort of, you don't want to run at midday or in the afternoon when it's going to be the hottest time of day. Get up early, run when the sun's just rising, or it's just got up. It's going to be a lot cooler and more bearable. And number two, if the purpose of what you're trying to do is warm weather training and you want to run in the heat, then just like be sensible about it. Make sure you're hydrated. Make sure you're going into the run well fueled, so that your body's not overworking and trying to compensate for other things that are going on. So yeah, just be prepared, and maybe bring a drink with you, and your heart rate's going to be higher when you're training in the heat because your body's trying to cool you down and regulate. So, maybe just slow down the paces a little bit. Don't worry, just run to feel. But I really don't think it takes that long to adjust. Your body does get used to it. And I mean, I just love it running in the heat. I think it just feels so good.
So what time have you been running in the morning to avoid the really bad heat?
Yeah, so this is something that I did have to get used to, was the very, very, very early starts that these people in Cape Town like. So I think it's a bit of a cultural thing rather than just the heat, but they love to get up really, really early. And I was doing some sessions, well, all of my sessions actually with the group, we were starting the warm up at 6 a.m. and which means you're up obviously way earlier than that, and you have to eat before that, and it's nice afterwards because you've got it done early and you've got the whole day. But yeah, it's a bit of a shock to the system. However, it did mean that the temperatures at that time were very bearable. You weren't even thinking about it being hot. I would normally do my double runs later in the afternoon when it would be quite hot, so they were just short, easy runs, and that's why that makes it a bit more bearable. But yeah, most of like the bigger stuff was early in the morning. Just had to get used to that.
And you still managed to have breakfast and fuel before?
Yeah, you have to. I mean, I know it's hard when you get up early, like you're like, you might not be hungry yet, or you want to take it easy. But if you're up at 5 and you've got a session starting at 6, like just get food down you whatever you can. I mean, I'm fine. I've just my stomach's usually fine having like a big bowl of porridge not long before running. So I would just get up at 5, have my normal porridge, and then I'd be good to go, knowing that I'm going into the session well fueled, rather than being caught short halfway through the session wishing that I'd eaten more. So I think
also so important with the heat because you get so much more depleted. So you 100% need that fuel, and it's good practice for races, I guess, because normally it's an early start.
Yeah, I think, you're right. It is really good practice for racing. Like you do wake up and I love breakfast, but waking up at 5 o'clock, I'm not thinking, oh yeah, I really want my porridge this second. But a lot of things with fueling, I actually just see it as part of training. It's not just eating a meal. It's like, no, this is part of my session. I need to get this food in me in order to get the most out of myself today. It's going to make me perform better, and I'm going to recover quicker afterwards because I'm not depleted. So yeah, I think just see it like that. If you're struggling to get the fuel in, like just see it as part of the training, and you can ease yourself in with like a banana or a gel, but you can then gradually make your way up to like a proper meal. But yeah, I think it's so important.
Yeah, that's a great insight. And actually, we do so many uncomfortable things in training that yes, you might not want to eat at 5 a.m. in the morning, but it's just another thing, as you say, that it's so important for training. And yes, if it's a bit uncomfortable, then you just get over it. And what about the hills? Because Cape Town is obviously in the mountains. So have you done a lot of hill running out there?
Yeah, so like all my sort of normal interval sessions and tempo sessions would just be on the flat, like promenade along the seafront, which is lovely and scenic. And then a lot of the easy runs, because Cape Town, you've just got a big fat mountain in the middle of the city. You can't avoid, unless you're just going to stick along like the seafront, which would get a bit boring. You want to go and explore. So yeah, you can't avoid like doing hilly routes, going on the trails. It's so beautiful as well. I think, yeah, you've got to run some hills. And I think if you're going to start running hills anywhere, Cape Town's a great place to do it because it is so beautiful. You're kind of distracted. So like running up hills, you can just look out and be like, wow, this is amazing. But yeah, I actually did notice, because I mean, I live in London, right? So it's very flat city. I live really close to Richmond Park, which I tend to say is a hilly place, but I have now been told Richmond Park it has bumps, not hills, bumps.
Oh, God.
That's the hilliest I generally get, but I really noticed over like 3 weeks of running in Cape Town and having a lot of my easier days and some sort of steady run days on the hills, you do adapt really quickly, and you do find them easier. And also I think mentally as well, you're not daunted by, oh god, like I've got to climb up this. It's just part of it. And I think a good tip there is also, like, if you're someone that's really obsessed with looking at your watch and your pace, just don't. It's like, it's all about the effort. If you're on an easy run, you don't need to be sprinting up the hill to like do your normal easy run pace. Like, you need to be the same effort as your normal easy run. And if you're doing a steadier run, the same thing, like it'll be a bit faster, but you don't need to be doing a hill sprint, because you're going to be going down the hill as well if you're going up. So it kind of evens out. But yeah, definitely think it makes you stronger. So I'm incorporating a bit more of that now. And there are other reasons that I need to incorporate some hills, which I'm sure we'll go into. But yeah, I think there are a lot of benefits of not just running on the flat.
Yeah, interesting. I know a lot of people do say hill running is very good for you. It's good for form, it's good for strength. But like you, living in London, I don't get a lot of practice. So that's interesting. You've actually seen a benefit. You're going to be running up and down that hill in Richmond 10 times just to get the same benefit as Cape Town.
Yeah, exactly. It is funny. Like, I've been in Richmond Park a few times since I've been home, and you do think like, God, this is nothing now. It's just so, they're so short.
So we all know how important good nutrition is to fuel our running performance. But one thing I get asked about a lot is how to fuel training sessions, because gels can be quite hard to tolerate and quite hard to get used to.
Especially as a lot of sports nutrition is heavily processed with artificial ingredients, not always that great on the stomach. But recently we've been trying Velo Forte and loving it, haven't we?
We have. Velo Forte is a natural way to fuel your performance. Their gut-healthy bars, recovery shakes and performance-enhancing gels and chews are all made from real, natural ingredients with no junk and additives, easier on your stomach and overall better for you.
And they taste delicious too. Chef-made recipes and so many incredible flavours. There's something for everyone, for every activity.
Favourite product?
My favourite product is the energy bar. Really good straight after a session or on the go.
I love this one. This is the recovery shake, and they just taste so delicious after a hard training session.
Thanks to Velo Forte for supporting this podcast. Head to veloforte.com and get 30% off by entering the code 5miles at checkout. That's the number 5 and the word miles.
So surely you've had a few hilly runs as well then, because you're based in the mountains at the moment, right?
Yeah, so we are. We're in the Sandia Mountains in New Mexico. And I have had a few hilly runs. We're in the foothills, beautiful trails. They're called the Sandia Mountains, which means watermelon in Spanish. And it's basically because as the sun sets, they look pink. So it's really beautiful. It's very, very dry here. It's basically a high desert. So the trails are all kind of compact sand, which is nice to run on. It's not like running in sand. But yeah.
But on that, do you think, what's the benefit of running on compact sand versus just always running on the road?
It's just a bit easier on your muscles, your joints. I think the tarmac is very high impact. Now I do most of my road sessions on tarmac, but I think I do try as much as possible to get on a softer surface. Just if you're running quite high mileage, it's just a lot of impact. So I think as much as you can kind of minimize that, the better. And the trails as well. I do think there's some kind of benefit to having the slightly uneven surface. There's obviously a balance to get in. It's not very rocky. It's for a trail, it's reasonably even, but it does just give your ankles and your kind of feet a bit of work. So you get a bit of ankle strength, a bit of foot strength, and that softer surface makes it a great, easy running option. But the mountain where we're staying, it is also quite high. So I'm going to go into a bit about altitude in a minute, but we wouldn't want to do all our running up here because the altitude and running the high altitude takes more out of you. So you don't want to be doing that for every single run. So we've been doing our some easy runs on the trails, mostly the double runs. And then we actually drop down to a river path where we do our longer easy runs and our sessions, and the track's kind of at the same level as well. So
okay, so it'd be good to understand then. So you said you're very high up. How high are you? What are the benefits of doing that, and why do you drop down 1,000 feet for some of those other runs and sessions?
Why do altitude training? It's basically a physiological response you get at altitude where your body will make more red blood cells. So now you do need to spend, I think 3.5 weeks is the minimum period that generally people agree on to start getting the benefits. It takes 3 weeks to make a red blood cell, but obviously it's not like 3 weeks and bang, you've got a whole load of new red blood cells. It takes a little while and you start making them. So 3.5 weeks is the minimum, but most people do about 5 to 6 weeks at altitude, kind of depending on how high you are, because you do have to balance it with the fact that it does kind of take a bit more out of your body. I'm here for 6 weeks, at which point I will have the full stock of new red blood cells, and basically that will allow more oxygen to be carried to my muscles, so hopefully I'll run faster. Now, the theory is it's called live high, train low. So you live as high as possible. So that's where we're literally right in the foothills of the mountains. And then you drop down a little bit to do the hard sessions so you can run faster. Because the problem with being at altitude is it's harder. So you don't have as much oxygen up high. So it makes running hard, more difficult, and you can't hit the same paces, which you do want to be able to do for some sessions because you need that kind of physiological benefit of being able to run at a certain pace. So we drop down a little bit, and all of our track sessions, our hard tempo sessions and long runs are done not that much slower than at sea level. Now, as we said in our Christmas episode, one thing I did learn was that running short distances, I think it's 300 meters and under, you're actually faster at altitude. But I obviously don't ever do 300 on this. You do get tired quicker when you're doing 20. But yeah, we do try and hit kind of fairly similar paces to sea level in our sessions. It will be like 5 to 10 seconds per mile slower. So not a huge difference.
Yeah. And so when you first arrived there, obviously it must take a bit of getting used to not having as much oxygen. So can you just jump into a normal week of training, or does it take some time to adapt to the altitude before you can do harder sessions?
It definitely takes a bit of time, and it's sensible to have at least a week of just easy running. I think when I first did altitude, I maybe even took a little longer than that. But now I've done a couple of altitude camps, your body can kind of adapt it a little bit quicker. But I still had the first week very easy. And that's important because you kind of need your body to adapt, to get used to it. And you don't want to overcook the first week, because one lesson and tip for altitude is you do have to be very careful about overcooking it, because your body is just working hard all the time, and you've got to be aware of that. So you need to take it a little bit easier in the first week and just kind of be conscious of, I think sometimes the tendency on a training camp is to see it a bit like a boot camp, and you go there and train more, but that definitely shouldn't be the case at altitude. If anything, do like a little bit less, because your body is just naturally working harder all the time. And the other really key thing is just to make sure you're fueling really well, because your body burns about 10% more calories than normal at altitude, just by being alive. So you need to make sure that you're eating well, and it's also very, very dry. So make sure you're really hydrated. Take electrolytes, drink loads of water. I mean, you kind of want to because your throat's dry and the air's very dry. But I think when it's cold, you've got to be very aware of that.
Yeah, that's so
Just stay on
interesting.
top of it.
Do you feel like with the fact that your body's using more energy to keep alive, do you feel like your body tells you that as well? Are you hungrier at altitude? Like, are you wanting to eat more? Is it more of like a mindful thing? Like, I know I need to do this.
I think it's a bit of both. I do get hungrier. I always wake up hungry in the morning, so however much I eat in the evenings. But after sessions, that's when it's got to be conscious, because sometimes, because your body's working harder, sometimes after sessions I don't really feel like eating because like my stomach's a bit sore and you just feel a bit like ugh. But then I have to be very conscious about like getting the fuel in straight away and recovering better, because your recovery does just take longer, so you need to be more on top of it.
Do you have any tips for that, for like straight after a session? Because I think that's so common after a session or a long run, you don't necessarily feel hungry, but what's a good way of getting fuel in if you don't feel like you want it?
I've taken a big stash of our Velo Forte products out with us. So I always have, and they're great and they're so portable. I've got those protein shake sachets which have the perfect ratio of carbs and protein in. So I always go for one of those. I know that they've got carbs, protein, they've got electrolytes and some BCCAs in them. So it's like the perfect, very portable solution, and I find them very easy to get down.
Yeah, that's perfect. So getting something that you can drink probably more than eating straight away until your stomach settles a bit.
Or a bar. A bar's a good option as well. It's kind of small and not too heavy, but a good kind of calorie dense snack.
Yeah. Nice. And you're out there with the Puma team, so your coaches are out there, which that must be great as well, because normally you're remotely coached being in London and they're in the US, so that must be nice being with them and the rest of the team.
Yeah, it's been great actually. I was out here just before Chicago, so and that was kind of really nice to catch up with everyone. But it's great to be out here for a solid block. It's a really, really fun team. Most of the crew are based in North Carolina for the year, so they're American or live in America. But it's very nice to come out and join them for their altitude camp. There's a big mix of distances. Not everyone's marathon runners here, and that's also really nice to have. To have a bit of variety in training. I mean, obviously, I'm still doing my own training, but you get pushed in different places. So I'm training with a 3K steeplechaser and a 5K runner. So I get really pushed on the fast stuff. And it's helped me to, help me with my speed because I can chase them around the track. And then there are some longer distance people here as well. So I get the benefit of both, which is great. And just being, with other runners is always a fun atmosphere, and we're all in it together and all on the same schedule. So that's been really fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. And when you're at home, you're not always around a bunch of pro runners. So is it a different feel being like living with professional athletes compared to when you're training at home?
Yes, it is. It is. And I think it makes me realize that at home I have a lot of distractions. So the biggest difference, as I said earlier, coming on a training camp isn't about training more necessarily. It's not like going on a boot camp and suddenly doubling my training. My training is the same. But the big difference for me is the recovery. And that's one thing I really noticed between the way that I kind of live at home and the way that everyone in the team lives. Like they quite rightly, because it's their job, really prioritize recovery. And it's something I'm not good at home at all. And I think partly because I've come from a very different background of having to juggle a lot. And so I'm also kind of programmed to do that. Whereas everyone here will, you do the session, There's the warm up is very long, all the stretches, whereas at home I run to the park, I do about 5 minutes of drills and strides, and then we're off. And then I run home as my cool down, and then I have a 10-minute shower, get ready, shove some lunch down, and then I'm out. Whereas here, it's really good long warm up. You do the session, good long cool down with stretches, and then you might go to the gym to do some kind of activation and hurdle drills, and then you get back and have lunch, and then you go for a nap, and then you just recover and then go for a double.
I can't imagine you being good at doing nothing, honestly.
No,
I have seen how you live.
It's not my forte, and I haven't quite managed to nap yet, but I have got better at recovering.
That's so good.
That's been a good change. I can't say I'm likely to implement it in London, but I've taken a good lesson as to that's actually how you're meant to do it. So if I can get a little bit closer to that, would be good.
Yeah, it's another one of those things where you can almost see it as part of the training. It's like, I'm allowed to do nothing because this is part of my training. This is me recovering. So you can give yourself that permission. But yeah, I totally know.
It's the hardest bit to do, I find, because I feel like I should be doing something all the time. And it's a bit of an irony about the running as a job. I always feel like I should be doing something for training, and recovery kind of feels like I'm not doing anything. So it's a hard one to get my head around.
Am I being lazy? Yeah, I could be doing something else. Yeah, totally. But yeah, so it's so interesting. I almost felt that as well. Like, even though I was working remotely when I was in Cape Town, but I did find that I think just having this headspace away from home, and like you say, not the distractions of, my dog was at home, who I missed a lot, but I didn't have to take her out for a walk, and I didn't have to do those little admin tasks of just when there's people around. And also, I guess the socializing as well. Like, I like to go see my friends, but when I was there, yes, I was socializing with people there, but it was almost in a bit of a different way and less time consuming, I guess. So I felt like my recovery was definitely had a bit more focus, and I feel like I've taken a bit of that back with me as well. Like, actually, you know what? I need to just be a bit more strict on these things, and that's okay. Like, you don't have to, there's that busyness culture in London, especially, I think, where you always want to be on the go. You want to commit to everything, like say yes to everything, but actually it's okay to say no, and just be like, you know what? I need to rest, and that's okay. So
and then you can actually do the things that you do better.
Yeah.
Because you're fresh and you're not exhausted.
Yeah. And you aren't stressed about it. I think sometimes I might wake up in the morning thinking, oh God, I've got to do this run, then I've got to do this, and I've got to do this, then I've got another run, then I've got to do this. And I'm overwhelmed from what I have to do in the day. Whereas actually it's like, if you strip it back a bit, what are the things that you really you want to prioritize? Okay, I need to get my run in. I need to do this bit of work, whatever else, and then just remove the things that are going to make that stressful. So it just makes, then you can approach the run without stressing about what you've got after the run, I think.
Yeah.
Way better.
I have a similar strategy when I have a million things on my to-do list. And inevitably I get stressed about it. And then I spend time sort of stressing about what order to do things in and not actually just doing it.
Yeah.
So I write down, I have a maximum of 3 non-negotiables for the day. And that will be my training. And then, it might be walking Willow. And then one other job. I'm like, right, that's my non-negotiables, and everything else is literally bonus points.
Yeah.
And that's the way I kind of reframe it to be like, well, if I literally don't get anything done, that's apart from these 3 non-negotiables, that's fine. And then I feel like I'm actually doing well because I'm getting bonus things ticked off. But it's also not going to be that long until you're back in Cape Town, is it? So tell us about that. Are you just sick of being back in the British winter already, or is there something else on the agenda?
Well, I guess a bit of both. Yeah. So I am. I mean, I've been back for a week, and honestly, I can't do it anymore. This weather, Josh, I'm having to like every day I'm messaging people like, who wants to run with me today? Because it like we've given this tip before is, try and meet up with people because it gets you out the door. And I've really been making the most of that, just trying to run with people as much as I can. But yes, I am going back to Cape Town at the right at the end of March. So I'll be there in the first couple of weeks of April because made the announcement recently that I have entered the Two Oceans Ultra Marathon, which is in Cape Town. Yeah, it's exciting. I've never done an ultra marathon before, so it's very new for me. Kind of been thinking about it for a while, and definitely had a few people at me saying, do this race, and for ages I'm like, no, like I don't want to do anything further than marathon. And then recently I was like, but maybe what if I'm good at it? Like, I don't know. You don't know until you try. And it kind of excited me. And so, yeah, I waited until I'd done the Beta Bay race, which was a 30K race I did when I was in Cape Town a couple of weeks ago. And I just wanted to see how that would go because it's 30K, which isn't as long as the 56K ultra that I've entered, but it's a hilly course, and it was just kind of a good indicator as to like if I was going to enjoy that type of race and how it went, how I felt about it, and if I ran it well. And I kind of had a really, really positive experience at that race. Really enjoyed it. Felt like I could have carried on. The hills weren't intimidating to me. So I was like, well, let's just give it a go. So yeah, my coach and I agreed that I could enter this ultra, and we're kind of seeing it as a little project to work on together because he's not, coached anyone for an event like that before, but he's excited about it as well. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I see it as a project. So yeah, we will see.
And you're not going to say this, but you won Beta Bay. It wasn't just a positive experience. You did really well in it.
Yeah, I won it, which, is obviously, great. And I just think, we've spoken about it a lot over the episodes and some of the work I've been doing with the sports psychologist. And I just feel like the last few months, I've really turned a corner with everything and just approaching the last few races, just not worried about racing. And the most recent discussion I had with my psychologist, actually, we kind of did a bit of a review of the work that we've done over the past year and like the progress that I've made. And I think the two words that stand out are acceptance and perspective. The two things that I've really kind of, those are the two words that I can really focus on now and that I feel like are becoming more second nature to me. And that's, accepting that things don't always go the way you want them to, and that's okay. And obviously you hope that it's going to go well, but just kind of accepting that there's any outcome. And I really feel like I do that now. And then perspective, just, like nothing really matters. You're doing it. You're lucky to be doing it. It's a privilege. There are way worse things going on, and just like enjoying it and making the most of the opportunities that you get. And I really feel like that's something that I feel as well. And at Beta Bay, I think that's heightened because I was just like, wow, how cool is this? And you just feel really lucky that everything else goes out the window. It's like, it's fine if I don't run a time that I want to run. Like, this is just so cool. So I think having those things gives you a better chance of running well, but also you're open to the option that you might not as well, and accepting that's okay.
Yeah, ultimately, you're always going to run better if you're in a positive mindset and your mind is on board with the journey. And do you think, I mean, obviously the ultra distance, you haven't done it before. So in some ways it might be a little more daunting than a marathon, which going back to that, just doing something different and something you've actually had a really positive experience with running in Cape Town. Does that feel in a way less daunting than doing a marathon where you haven't, the last couple haven't been the most positive experiences?
Yeah, I think there's a bit of both. So I think, yeah, you're right. Like, I've never done it, so it could be daunting. There's a lot of unknowns. We've spoken about the hills in Cape Town. It's a very, very hilly course, and most of the climbs come after you've gone through the marathon distance. So your legs are going to be tired, and that's what I've got to train for. So yeah, a lot of it's daunting and unknown, but I'd say I'm way more excited than worried about it. And I do think, like you said, because it's new and there's no pressure, and it's not external pressure. I feel like I put a lot of pressure on myself, and I feel like I want to get the best out of myself that I can, but I don't have loads of pressure to be like, you've got to come this position, you've got to have this time. It's just more like, let's see what you can do. Train really hard. Get the most out of yourself. You could surprise yourself. You may hate it. Like, I'm open to all these options, but I think, yeah. And also, I'm not shying away from the marathon. Like, I've got unfinished business there, and I almost think, actually, if I can put some focus on doing some other events, then it will take some of that pressure off the marathon distance. And actually, if I entered a marathon afterwards, it's like, okay, well, this is another race that's a bit of fun. And rather than having all the focus on like the marathon's the distance that you've got to execute perfectly, I can kind of, change my perspective on that as well.
Yeah, and exactly, give you some perspective on it.
Yeah,
it's just a race. Like, it's just one of the many distances out there that you could run.
Yeah, exactly. I think over the years I've kind of like had this thing that's like, the marathon's the one that I've got to nail. It's actually, well, I could nail anything, so let me try something further, and then I can come back to it. Because like, definitely unfinished business. I know I've got more in me over that distance. I still want to achieve things in the marathon, but it's cool to mix it up with something else, and it might take me on another journey, which I don't even know yet. So yeah, we'll see. And in the meantime, we've got some really exciting episodes coming up and lots of guests. I'm really excited.
We have, and that, I have to say, is one of the main reasons I'm excited about coming home. Not so much for the weather. I'm definitely going to miss the sunshine, but it will be great to be back in the studio very soon with our editor and all the guests to come.
Well, I can't wait to have you back. I need my run buddy.
Very soon.
Thanks for joining us for 5 Miles Easy.
See you next time.